Hey, welcome back. So we're going to continue to detail the hands and the body and refine all this, our character here. So please like, comment, subscribe, and we'll jump into it. So let's start with these hands. They're looking very kind of mushy and inflaty and kind of weird. So I'm going to start with using my clay build-up brush with symmetry on, ensuring symmetry is on, and just start to push some of these details a little bit more. And I mean, I've done a lot of hand modeling and stuff throughout my career, so I kind of have an idea of what goes where. But it's always good to grab your own reference and get an idea for where these tendons kind of flow and where the joints, where the joints are at, and which fingers are longer or shorter, and etc. So feel free to pause and grab some reference. But for me, I'm just going to muscle through this and start adding these joints. And I need to subdivide. I'm going to hit Control D. Whoops. Why can't I subdivide? Let's check this out. Oh, I have a mask on. So you can't subdivide if you have a mask on. So clear your mask, Control left click drag, clear your mask, hit Control D, and you can enter subdivision level 4. That guy's real pro. So cranking on these knuckles. Again, just pushing them out and then smoothing, pushing out and smoothing. It's all kind of the same strategy. And I'm trying to keep away from the front edge of the bumps so that we have a tiny bit of a crease there, if that makes any sense at all. And I want to square out my fingertips. I'm going to use Snake Hook without Sculptors Pro on because I want to keep my geometry nice and clean for the moment until we get through the pose phase. So I'm squaring out the fingertips. And then I want to flatten the beds of our fingernails. So I'm going to use H polish and come over here and just kind of push these down and crank my intensity up all the way. Get us some fingernails. I was watching Lord of the Rings and I was checking out Frodo's hands, and man, he's got the stubbiest. He is the ultimate nail biter. He is the stubbiest fingernails I've ever seen. But I kind of dug the look for this guy, so I'm gonna give him some nice stubby. Using the Damien standard to bring back our creases after we've smoothed stuff. Coming in, sorry, getting sidetracked for the fingernails again. Story of my life, getting sidetracked, man. Alright, so going back to H polish, and I'm going to go back to the Damien standard, and this is going to give me the front edge of my nail. Holding Alt, I'm going to go along this edge loop. I'm going to scoot it back just a little, and that gives me the front edge. So I'm pulling out, and then underneath I'm pushing in, and then I'm following kind of, you can see the edges in the geo. I'm kind of trying to follow that the best I can, just following the topology. Oops. And this guy, oops, too big. I want him to look like he's a nail biter like Frodo. Okay. There's that one. I skipped right over the middle finger. Now he's got some fingernails. Hands are easily the most difficult thing to sculpt next to the face. They're just like, there's so much you can get wrong on the anatomy of the hand. It takes just so much practice. And not to say that I've nailed it, but I feel like I've finally get to a place where I'm figuring it out a little bit. But again, these are stylized, so we're not trying to make these like a photoreal looking deal. Square up the fingernail themselves a little. Cool, those are looking better. Pop out where those joints would be in the knuckles. Smoothing. Damien standard. Okay. Let's fix our thumb. So going back to our clay buildup, using the same process to build out that thumb knuckle. and staying away from that leading edge so I can kind of leave that crease there because I think that's nice looking. Going back to H polish, flattening out our nail bed area and smoothing slightly, and then Damien Standard to carve that in. So push it in underneath and pop it out. Cool. We didn't square the thumb up as much. Let's focus on that. And so one thing that's nice to know too is when you're holding shift and smoothing is while you're holding and smoothing, if you let go of shift, it'll actually use a different algorithm, like a different smooth process, which kind of gives you unique results. So as you're, and that's typical, I think, of most brushes. If you're holding shift and as you're left clicking and holding, let go of shift, and it'll use just kind of a different look. Also, real quickly, if you would like to try different types of similar brushes, ZBrush has a ton of presets. So if you go over here to Lightbox Tools and go over to Brush, you can see it's got all of these presets for these different brush types. So if you're working on a really high poly geo, you can come in here to smooth and you can use this like smooth stronger, and if you hit OK, it's saying that's going to be the new default. So now when I smooth, it's really going to smooth it. And I actually really like this brush a lot, and that way I can, if it's too intense, I can just drop it down while holding shift. I'll just drop my intensity. I love the smooth stronger brush. Still going to try to pull out, like, refine his joint anatomy, his skeletal structure just a little bit more at the tops of his wrists. Maybe he's got some bonier wrists. And going up his arm, and we'll start adding a little bit of muscle structure, dropping down the intensity of our Damien Standard brush, and adding this guy here. And then we add a little crease at the base of the elbow, and kind of pull some definition out this way. And we have this little interesting nub right here, little bone joint. I'm going to throw in. And using this snake hook to give us a more pronounced elbow coming up into the tricep area, giving a little bit of a crease there. We don't want them to get too ripped, but it's just kind of fun to practice anatomy wherever you get the chance. It's always good to get better at anatomy, and we're always going to push this a little bit further and then just smooth it right back. So we've got a little bit of a crease right here. And then we'll go with the crease of the side of the arm. And this muscle sort of like tucks right into the side of the bicep. At least I think it does. Could be wrong. I feel like that's looking pretty natural. Try to achieve our little V shape right here where the trap comes in. Sometimes in topology you'll see these little point tools, and that smooth process I was telling you about earlier, if I was just to run a smooth while holding shift, you see it doesn't really get rid of that. But if I'm holding shift and then I left click and then let go and just keep holding, sometimes you can get rid of these little interesting topological artifacts. See, like it's almost gone now at this point. We can also come in with the H polish and sort of push that away. And obviously it's still there and it's still going to be a nuisance, but once we move into Dynamesh phase, it won't cause us so much trouble, and then it won't really matter as much. So just still kind of pushing our details. And these muscles right here are always like tricky ones. So this is going to be like our traps. So we come in here, there's a little bit of a V shape, then it comes up the neck, and then we have some fun little like shoulder blade muscles here. I don't know the names of anything. And then down here, there's also like a little V shape too, where these guys kind of, I think these are your lats. These kind of come in. And then if we lose these interesting little spinal bumps, we can always add those back in after the fact. So, again, we don't want them to look super cut, like crazy ripped to the point where it's distracting. Coming all the way up the skull or the neck to the skull. Maybe let's add like a nice little, the hair's gonna hide this, but it's fun to practice. Add these little wrinkles right here at the base of the skull. And then we lost, I think, a guy right here, so let's pop that guy back out. And our concept has these really popped out, which I dig, so I'm gonna continue that. And then maybe go in a little bit down here. And let's refine his hip area. And these muscles can get real tricky too. So come back around to the pelvic area. So it's kind of fun, like you just let the muscles kind of take you around the character. And these guys have an interesting kind of like little bump right here, and then there's always, it's not like a perfect straight line, but we got to be careful because we don't want to be pushing into perfect realism. We still want this character to be stylized. So again, with the Damien standard, I'm holding Alt to bring out my details as well as pushing in and just kind of trying to get these interesting little creases going. And these muscles here, they come up like this. And they kind of come to a point, and then in between there's like an offset of the similar muscle. And we have kind of accentuated his rib cage. It's almost like he's not following like a human anatomy right here, but I like it, so I'm going to kind of maintain that. Okay, so we've got his chest refined a little bit better. Let's really push his collarbone. And then these guys kind of like tuck in underneath the armpit in like a V type shape. So pull out a little, check it out from a distance. It's looking better. Sometimes it's fun to really scale up the size of your Damien standard and start to add those larger details. See what they can do for you. Refine his glutamus maximus. Gluteus? I don't know. I barely speak English, you guys. That's my first language and I barely speak it. Glutamus? Gluteus? Oops. Still on the Damien standard brush. So pushing down the legs now. We've gone through the arms and through his body. He's still getting a little bit too ripped in my opinion, so we're going to come back and just continue to smooth some of this stuff out a little bit better. Standard brush. It's good for pushing forms around sometimes. Using H polish to flatten. Get those hips popped out a little bit more. And coming back to his hand, taking a moment to refine these inner hand details because we didn't really push those. So, got his palm. Looks like he's got a kind of a weird offset here. Now, if you would like to get everything else out of the way, so his legs are kind of getting in the way of us, what we can do is adjust the visibility, hide some of our mesh. So if I hold Control-Shift, you'll see that there's a drag rectangle right here, a dotted rectangle. And you can use this guy just to Control-Left-Click and drag outside. And green means that's going to be visible. Let go. And now his hands are the only things visible. Nothing's deleted. It's just invisible. You can use that one, or you can hold Control-Shift and then come in here and use like the select lasso, and you have a little bit more control over your visibility of things. So just get everything else out of the way and really focus on these inner hands. Crank my intensity on my Damien standard, and some wrinkles under there at the wrist level, the palm area, and then some wrinkles where his knuckles are in his hands. Oops. Okay. Okay, so Damien standard, let's like sharpen up some of these details. Sharpen up his palm a little bit. Use the H polish to flatten stuff out. Flatten the beds of his fingertips here. Smoothing stuff back just ever so slightly. Skinnier, using the snake hook. Cool. His hands are definitely looking better. So again, just an in and out workflow. In with that crease, getting that little bone on the wrist there in. And there's kind of a weird bump. Let's turn down our intensity on our standard brush and kind of push that in a little. Getting these tendons from the fingers to come in. Okay, so in order to bring everything back, hold just Control Shift left click anywhere outside of your geo, and it'll bring back your character. And I think we're doing great on the hands, and the arms are looking a lot better. Damien standard, I'm going to push some of these details just a little bit more. So I'm snake hooking this guy into place because there's something not quite right. One thing to do too is remember that you have all these lower subdivision levels at your disposal. This is one thing you cannot do with clay. Not to knock the clay, guys. I love clay, you guys. Don't think I'm not a fan. But we can go down, hit Shift D to drop down to our lower subdivision levels, and you can actually work. Sometimes brushes just work differently on lower poly counts, and you get a better result working with pushing some of these things on in the lower subdivision levels and then stepping right back up. And so just be sure to, Shift D and then hit D to swap between your subdivision levels and work, and use that. It's just another tool at your disposal to really advance the quality of your artwork. So these guys have kind of weird look. Dropping down to subdivision levels because they're a little too inflated out. I just want to push those in and have this kind of flatten back out a little bit more. Cool. All right. So I think this is pretty good for the upper body. Let's move down into, you know what? I don't know if I like this bottom lip shadow. Let's see if we can get rid of it with the H polish, holding Alt, and minimize that guy. I think it's going to add to the stylizing feel. Cool. Turn off solo and see how everything looks together. Oh yeah, cool. Let's inflate. Come in here to inflate. I need to set that to a hotkey. And then we'll inflate these ridges here in the ear a little bit more. Bring in our point just a smidge. And push in this area. Cool. Smoothing. Alright, sweet. Now, one thing that's fun to do too, just for, that I like to do, just to make things look a little bit more appealing. His feet, his forward-facing feet are great for rigging purposes, but it just looks weird. He looks really stiff. Obviously, he's in a T pose, so he's not intended to be in a dynamic pose just yet. But I like to come in here and mask out my legs and blur that mask. Come down and position my pivot in the hip area, relock, and then I just like to kind of rotate my feet out a little bit more, like he's standing like a normal human being. And then that actually adds a lot of appeal to my character, so I just feel better about it. And then that way, you know, later on, if you are going to send this through rigging and anim, you can just straighten those out later on before you hand it off to those guys. Sometimes I find that my hand moves back to a mouse. Looks like we got some interesting cracking happening in his crack. So we're going to smooth this out. And you might be asking yourself, okay, we might have lost our symmetry a little bit. And you can come down here to in your tool drop down in deformation, you can do what's called a smart resim on X, and it'll do its best to resimulate all of your topology so that your symmetry works a little bit better. I'm not crazy concerned about this because most of the important stuff that I need is symmetrical. But that's one way to get around that. If you find that you've accidentally not had symmetry on while you were sculpting or what have you, you can just click that guy. So let's get in here and give him a little bit of anatomy. Just little bits. Just like so. And then we're not going to go all the way. Let's give him I think the belly button is just above this. It's like in this area right here. So we'll give him a belly button. Just a subtle one. We don't want to get too detailed with the friggin' belly button. He wants to look at that anyway. Okay, and then let's give him a loincloth. So we're gonna turn on our mask. So come over here and go to mask pen, and with your symmetry on, we're gonna come up here and follow kind of the pelvic area, and just kind of draw this like interesting little like sumo wrestler. I don't know what you call it. Undies. Come all the way around. Give him a panel back here to cover these bits. And I know like the version in the movies had basically nothing covering him, but maybe we'll explore this a little bit and give him, I don't know, some modesty shorts or something. I mean, no one wants to see this stuff underneath here. I mean, who wants to see that? Anyway, some people want to see it. All right, so now that we've got our mask drawn out, let's come over here to our subtool palette and to extract. And we don't want 0.02 is probably going to be a little too thick, so let's drag it down to like 0.004 or 5 and hit extract. And then we'll hit accept. And so now this is a subtool we can work with, and we want it to be longer. So we're going to come down over here with the snake hook brush and drag this guy down a good amount. And drag this guy down a good amount. Now we've got a little bit of modesty here. So when your kids come in and watch you working on this, they're not like, what are you doing? What are you working on there, Dad? Because that does happen. Alright, so just something to cover for now. We'll refine this definitely as we get it in pose. Peeking through here. Turn off symmetry, and I mean this is going to be like torn up and all kinds of stuff, so we're not going to plus it a ton right this moment. But yeah, so let's go with that for now. Perfect. Maybe we'll add some wrinkle detail. Come up here with the standard brush and just kind of push in some details. Control D, subdivide, turning off symmetry because you don't want symmetry on while you're doing wrinkle detail. That's not how it works. And so there's something there. Cool. Okay. Let's hit save. Fairly happy with where this is going. And let's go work our way down the legs. I got a few more minutes here. Let's stylize these kneecaps a bit using the Decimate standard. I'm going to Alt left click on this mesh to make sure that's the active subtool, and I'm going to Alt left click with the Decimate standard to make sure I'm coming out with my details, and then I'm going to push in with like kind of a V shape. I find that the body has a lot of these kind of V shapes in it, especially in the muscle structure. So I'm going to come over here and create another kind of a V shape, because we have these two kind of muscles that come in. I'm going to turn on solo mode to get that loincloth out of the way. I'm going to clear my mask, control left click drag, and I'm going to create this big giant muscle right here, this big thigh muscle, which is another V shape. So we'll make that and come in like that. Smoothing back a little bit because we pushed it a little bit hard. On Alt, pushing it out. I'm fairly certain this muscle kind of slides up the leg a little bit further than the inside one. So, yeah, go with that route. And our knees are too pointy, definitely. Let's pull those in. You know what this character kind of reminds me of is Abe from Abe's Odyssey. You ever played that game? I love that game. Such a sweet game. Using your telekinesis to take over enemies, and such a rad game. Okay, so we'll bring these in a little. Start pushing our detailing around the back. More V shapes, yay! More V shapes, so many. And then we get these little pits in the back of our knees, like the armpit equivalent of our knees. Down another line, and then let's come out with the detail here and push in towards the bottom like we did with the kneecaps. And ooh, that's gonna a little crazy, so let's switch down our subdivision levels a little so we can adjust the large forms better, and then come back up and push these in just a little more. And using the Decimate standard, just kind of running all over the place. And using H polish to refine our calves. And snake hook to bulk those out even more. These are getting kind of pointing outwards kind of in a weird way. These are tricky too. All anatomy is hard. It's just something you got to keep practicing. Just stick it out. Okay, so get that guy back, this guy back, and some wrinkles underneath the knees here. I think there's like a muscle right here too. I guess. Right there. Just another V shape, why not? So many V shapes. Okay, cool. His knees and his thighs are looking a lot better. I like that they're still maintaining stylization, and this is kind of bulging out a little bit too far. Using the snake hook, gonna push that in, and work our way down to his ankles. With the Decimate standard, I'm gonna pop these guys out. We want those ankles to really pop. In H polish, holding Alt. Whoops, what happened here? H polish. Okay. Push the wrong hotkey. Alright, and then this ankle. I'm kind of coming up the leg with that tendon. With this character, his feet are obviously going to be visible, so we got to really push those. It's not always the case. You get shoes and boots on and stuff. So, okay, let's do the same thing to his toes, basically that we did to his fingers, and give him some little knuckle nubs, some knuckle nubs here. That's gonna be my uncle name, Uncle Knuckle Nubs. And they have these like tendons too that come out of those. So I'm using clay buildup and then smoothing back. And obviously we got some weird deformations going on here. So I'm gonna square these toes out just like we did with the fingertips. A little bit more. And again, we can go down our subdivision levels. It's gonna make it easier to work with. Gonna separate these toes just a little bit. And go to inflate and inflate those back out a little. Okay. His feet could be very stylized and interesting. So heel, I'm gonna make it come down a little. We're rotating around this guy. And pull up that. Okay, and go back up our subdivision levels and start carving in our nails. I apologize if I'm moving a little quick. I've done this for a lot of years, so I will make a conscious effort to slow down, but feel free to slow down the video or pause and do what you have to do. I'm using the Damien standard again, cranking my intensity and pushing and pulling my nails out. Just like my wife does with her nails, pushing and pulling her nails out constantly. She's always picking at her nails. Alright, so we're gonna give a little knuckle behind this guy and a little knuckle right here. Okay, cool. Turn on my Shift F for my polyframe. So one thing that's cool about these polygroups, I don't know if I've explained yet, is if I hit Shift F, you can see these are different colors, and what those are is a different polygroup. So if I wanted to get these other toes out of the way easily, one thing I can do is Control Shift left click on that polygroup, on the vertice within that polygroup on a point, and it'll hide everything else except for that polygroup. So now we can really dive in and shape this toe the way we want it without other things getting in the way. Just remember that is Control Shift on a point, and then everything else will get out of the way for you. So this guy's kind of squirrely. Okay, this guy needs some love. Whoops. Yeah, when you select an edge, that's what it does. It just tries to select the entire edge loop. I've never found a use for that, really, but it is what it is. As my father-in-law says, it is what it is. Who knows what that means? Alright, so going back to, don't forget your move topological. You can also do the same kind of deal with those depending on the scale of the brush size. I'm pretty happy with his feet at the moment. I'm probably going to make him look chunkier, thicker, but let's turn off solo mode and check out our character, kind of rotate around. So overall, I'm very happy with the character so far. I think we're getting very close to pose point, where we can start posing the character. His hair still needs to be refined, so in the next video we'll go through and just refine this a little bit further, and I promise we will dive into the posing of the character and maybe give him a temporary base to stand on, and so hopefully we'll get to that point in the next video. Again, like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.